Hey guys, welcome back to Coding Adda. Aditya this side, and in this video, we are going to understand what are different kinds of variables, secrets, and inputs that are used in GitHub Actions. We'll be obviously creating a very simple program as well to take inputs from the user, use variables and environment secrets when we are deploying our application. Okay, so without any further delay, let's get into the computer screen and let's start with the video. In the earlier video, we created a Hello World application, but in this video, we will be understanding what are the three major things that are used in GitHub Actions. Okay, so what is the first thing? The first thing is variables. So variables are something which store non-sensitive information or configuration values. For example, this can be app name or a node version. What you can do is you can set at settings, secret and variables and go inside the variables. Okay. And the second thing, secrets store sensitive values like password, API keys. Like let's say you are deploying something and you want to have your DB password or DB API key onto the environment variable or environment secret. That's where you are trying to store sensitive values. Just like the way you store it in your .env folder in your React application or Next.js application. The same way you have to implement it over here. We can set it as settings, secrets and variables and then go into secrets. The third thing is inputs. Values the user inputs when in running workflow manually. For example, which environment I should deploy to. Okay. So here what we have is very simple GitHub action, which will take the environment from the user and then give it the output here. Okay, so the name we are keeping here as the variable secrets and inputs. The GitHub action name is that. And what we'll be doing, we'll be only triggering the workflow when the user clicks run workflow manually. We don't want to automate that process that whenever there is a check-in, please trigger this workflow. Okay. Now we have workflow dispatch, which will help us to trigger the workflow. And then we have a key called input. So what it is that input parameters allow you to specify data that action expects during the runtime. GitHub stores input parameters as environment variables. Input IDs with uppercase letters are converted to lowercase during runtime. So they recommend to use lowercase input IDs. Okay. So there are three inputs that we are taking here. The first input is a drop down with fixed choices. Okay. So the environment here is a string identifier to associate with the input. Next is the description, a string description of the input parameter. Which environment do you want to deploy to? We are keeping this input as true, that we need this input to be done. Without this input, it can't move forward. So we are keeping the required as true. What is the type? Type is a choice. There are different types that are allowed in GitHub Actions. As you can see here, the allowed values are choice, string, boolean, number, or an environment. Next are the options. The options of a drop-down list. So these are the three different options that I want to have: development, staging, and production. And by default, we will have the development option chosen by the user or by the system. The next input that we want is a simple text field. The identifier is the version here. The description would be what version are you deploying. Example, V version 1.10.0. The type would be a string. It is not required if the user does not put the version, it will directly pass, and the default version would be the version 1.0.0. Next is the input, a yes no toggle. The identifier would be run test. Should we run test before deploying? It would be either yes or a no, and default will be kept as true. Okay, so these are the three inputs that we will be taking from the user, and then the jobs would be triggered. The first job that we have is learn variables. So it will be running on the GitHub hosted runner, which is Ubuntu latest. And then the inputs that are taken from the user will be set as environment variables over here. So as we can say, these are env variables. These are like global constants for your workflow. You can define them once and use them anywhere below. What we are doing here is we are setting our environment variables directly under the environment key, wherein we are keeping the app name as my coding Adda app and the node version is 20. Okay, and then these are the steps that we are performing. Okay, what we are doing here is the inputs that we are taking from the user, we are just displaying it here. Okay, so the name is step 1 as show user inputs, and what we are running is we are just echoing the inputs provided, and then we are echoing environment and then inputs dot environment. These are basically called from here. Values that are stored in these particular IDs. So inputs dot environment will help us give the environment as a response, inputs dot version and input dot run test. So as you can see, the version would be this and inputs dot version, run test, input dot run test. Next, the environment variables that we have stored here or we have printed here will be returned over here, wherein we are just directly giving it via shell script $app name and $the variable name. Okay, and we'll go over this in the next step, but let's first test this particular GitHub action in real time. So what we'll do, get status, get add, get commit -m. We'll just say understanding variables and inputs. Okay, get push origin master. Okay, after that we have pushed this particular code into the repository. We have another workflow that run that happens. Let us just refresh this. You can see we have a different workflow, variable secrets and inputs. Let's click on this and there is another happening, say hello. Okay, why? Because this is the hello world action that is getting triggered. Okay, what we'll have to do is we'll go into all workflows and then we'll choose the variable secrets and inputs workflow. Remember, what we have done here is we have added a key with the name workflow dispatch. So it will only be triggered when user manually triggers the workflow. And here, if you see, it says this workflow has a workflow dispatch event trigger. That's where we have the option to run the workflow. Now it asks us that, okay, you have to use the workflow from this branch. Yes. Which environment do you want to deploy to? I will say I want to deploy to development. And what is the version? Version 1.0.0. And should we run test before deploying? I'll click as no. And I'll click on the run workflow. Now this is where the workflow will get triggered. Okay. So if you see here, this is the first job that is happening and starting here, which is run variables. Okay. Now, if you see, there are different things that are happening. Okay, I'll just open this over here on the right hand side. Okay, so the first thing is to set up the job, and then as you see here, the step here executed shows that show user inputs and then show use environment variables. Let's go here and let's understand this. Okay, these are the inputs that we provided. We want to have the environment as development, version as 1.0.0, and we are running the test as false. That's very good. Next are the environment variables. If you see here, this was the environment variable that we had set up. The app name as my coding Adda app and the node version is 20. Here what you can do is, if you are actually deploying your applications using the actual node versions, you can specify the node versions along with the node path. Okay, and next it will ask for the secret over here. Let's see if it has worked or not. Okay, API is set to false and first 4 characters are this. Don't worry, we'll get into that right now. Okay, so now that we have the understanding of what are variables and inputs, next step is to go with the secrets. So secrets, as I said, these are one of the most important things whenever you are building any applications. The ones that you store in your .env file or environment variable files in any of your projects. So secrets are set in GitHub settings, not in this file. They are automatically hidden in the mask logs. Okay. So how do you add a secret? First is to go on to the GitHub repo. Okay, I am on my repo. Click on settings, secrets and variables and action. I'll click on settings and then I'll go to secrets and variables and I'll go to actions. Okay. Next, what is the step? Next step is to click on new repository secret, and then I'll say what is the secret that I have to add, my API key, and I'll just keep the secret as my API key. Okay, and then click on save, add secret. Okay, secret names can start with only alphanumeric letters, underscore spaces must not be allowed, must start with letter A to Z or underscores. Okay, so I'll have my API key and I'll just say this is my API key. underscore. Okay, we'll add a secret. Okay, now the secret is present here. And how do we use it here? We use it like secrets dot my API key. It's kind of you can say it's kind of an object that we are trying to get here, or an array, secrets dot my API key. So my key is to map the secret to the local environment variable for this step. Remember, you don't have to use this particular thing to print it anywhere. Okay, because if you are trying to print it, your API key would be exposed in a GitHub action, and that would cause your project or your product to get exposed with the API keys to all the white hat hackers or people who are trying to hack your project. Okay, and what we are running here is to just see, okay, API key is set to that particular API key, and the first 4 characters are this particular thing. And as I said, never print the full secret. GitHub it will mask it anyway. Okay, so let's see. I'll just push this changes, and I'll just what I'll do is I already have pushed these changes. Sorry. What I'll do is I'll click on this thing and then run the workflow development. I don't want to run the test as of now. We are just checking if the GitHub secrets are present or are getting masked and in our response as well. Okay. So if you see, it is evaluating and it was checking if the job is ready to be started or not. So we'll directly go into this particular step, which is the step 3 that we have here, because that's where we are using the secret. We'll click on step 3, and if you click here, you will say, okay, API key is set true. Earlier in the earlier action, you saw that API was set to false. And if you see, the first 4 character is this, and the last characters that I gave was this is my API key underscore. So it gave me the first 4 characters and then masked all the characters after that. Okay, let's now even try to use a variable from settings. Okay, so variables are like secrets but not hidden in the logs. You can directly expose those variables. So use them for non-sensitive informations like URLs, region names. How do you add a variable? Click on settings, secrets and variables, actions, and in the variable tab. Okay, settings. I'll click on secrets and variables, actions, and then what I'll do is I'll click on variables. Okay, what is the variable that they want to have me? App URL. Okay, I'll click on new repository variable, app URL, and I'll just give the app URL as codingadda.in. Okay, that's it. Then go to GitHub Actions again. Now that we have our variable URL set, we can trigger this particular workflow again to check and run the workflow. Now if you see, we are using the repository variable. So it said that app URL from the settings is https:/addacoding.in. So this is how we are also taking the variable from the GitHub repository. Okay. Now next step is to create a variable on the fly. Sometimes you need to calculate a value and then pass it to the next step. So write it in GitHub env to make it available in the later steps. So how do we create a dynamic variable? So let's say we are having the date as today, date plus the year, month, and date, and we just print as today is this, and then store it into the $GitHub env. Okay, and then we say created variable today is equal to the value of today. And how do we use this dynamic variable from the step 5? Just print it. Okay, so in this particular action only we will be able to see what it did is created variable today. So today is 4th of March 2026, created variable today, and then it is trying to use the dynamic variable from the step 5. So today's date is this date. Okay, next step, if we want to have conditional steps. Okay, in the last 2 actions you would have seen that it did not pass because it would only run the test if the user said yes. So how do we add that? So here in the step 7 we have run test if the user said yes. So if the inputs.run test is set to true, then only we will be triggering this particular step. So here we have an if statement you can use the if conditional to prevent a step from running unless a condition is met. Okay, and we just say running the test. You can use the actual test command to use npm run test. And there is a second step that is getting triggered to skip the test if the user said no. Okay, and if you want to have some additional steps saying that, okay, production warning, if input environment is set to production, you are deploying to production with the environment and the version. Okay, and after that we have a final summary to say all done, the app name, the target, version, and the date today. So let us try having this tests as well. Okay, so what we'll do here is close this, click on this, run workflow, and we'll also say, okay, I want to run the test before deploying, and then click on running the workflow, and it is getting triggered. Click here again, and then it says that it started 4 to 5 seconds ago. Okay, now if you see this particular steps, which is 7a, is active. You can see that it is running all your tests. You can use the actual test command like npm run test. And after that, it gave us the final summary. Okay, the app is this, the target is development, version is this, today's date is this. And after everything is successful, it will say the job is complete. Okay. Many a times to understand, okay, if your GitHub actions are working fine, what you can do is on your code, if you go here, you will see a tick mark here. Okay, success, meaning that there was a GitHub action that got triggered. And if you want to check that GitHub action, you can click here and you can see that all the checks have passed. Along with that details, if you click here, you will get to the details of that GitHub action that got triggered. Okay, I think, yeah, this is the GitHub action that got triggered. So yeah, in this video, we understood how can we keep our variables secrets and how can we take the input from the user whenever there is a GitHub action which is to be triggered. Obviously, we triggered that action manually, but we can also trigger that action on the go. We can use it directly when we are checking into the code or creating any merge request. In the next video, we will be deep diving into what are the runners, and we will be understanding much more about what are the different kind of runners provided by Git and what is a self-hosted runner. So if you like the video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel, and see you guys in the next one. Until then, bye-bye.